When I discovered my sister had turned my personal tragedy into a cash grab, scamming our family and friends, I couldn't believe someone so close to me could sink that low. But as I dug deeper, the truth I uncovered was even worse than I could have imagined. It all began with the accident, a single moment that turned my life upside down. I was crossing the street on my way home from work when a car ran a red light. The impact was instantaneous and brutal, sending me sprawling onto the pavement. When I woke up in the hospital hours later, the pain was overwhelming. My leg was in a cast, my ribs ached with every breath, and my head throbbed from the concussion. The physical injuries were devastating, but the emotional toll was just as heavy. I went from being independent and active to relying on others for even the simplest tasks. Weeks in the hospital blurred into one another as I endured surgeries, physical therapy, and an endless stream of doctor's appointments. The frustration of not being able to take care of myself gnawed at me daily. Amidst the chaos, my family became my lifeline, at least that's what I thought. My sister, Lisa, was particularly attentive. She was always at the hospital, bringing me meals, fluffing my pillows, and keeping me company during those long, painful days. "Don't worry about anything," she would say, her voice full of reassurance. "I've got you." At the time, I was grateful. Lisa's presence felt like a blessing, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this ordeal. She took on responsibilities I couldn't manage, from coordinating with doctors to running errands and updating family members about my progress. When she told me she wanted to set up a fundraiser to help cover my medical bills and lost wages, I was touched by her thoughtfulness. "I know you'd never ask for help yourself," she said, her tone brimming with sincerity. "But people care about you, and they'll want to support you. Let me handle this. It'll be one less thing for you to worry about." I was hesitant at first. The idea of accepting money from friends and family felt uncomfortable, even humiliating. But Lisa was persistent, assuring me it was for my own good. "Just focus on getting better," she said. "I'll take care of the rest." Unbeknownst to me, her words came with ulterior motives. In the beginning, the fundraiser seemed like a kind gesture. Lisa shared it on social media, posting updates about my condition and encouraging people to donate. Friends and family rallied behind the cause, sharing heartfelt messages of support and contributing what they could. But as the days turned into weeks, small inconsistencies began to surface. Lisa became strangely evasive whenever I asked about the fundraiser's progress. "It's going fine," she'd say, quickly changing the subject. One afternoon, a family friend visited me in the hospital and mentioned donating a generous amount to the fundraiser. "I hope it's helping take some of the financial stress off your shoulders," she said with a smile. I nodded and thanked her, but her words left me unsettled. I hadn't seen a dime of the money Lisa was supposedly raising, and I hadn't thought to ask about it until that moment. Where was it all going? As my recovery continued, so did the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Lisa's behavior became harder to ignore. Her enthusiasm for helping me seemed to wane, replaced by vague excuses and cryptic responses. And the more I observed, the more it became clear. Lisa wasn't just managing my fundraiser. She was controlling it. What I didn't yet realize was that she had turned my tragedy into an opportunity for herself, one that would unravel everything I thought I knew about her. In the weeks following my accident, Lisa became my unofficial spokesperson. She took control of everything, too much in hindsight. She was relentless in her efforts, taking over my social media accounts to post updates about my recovery and tirelessly sharing links to the fundraiser she had set up. "Everyone's asking how you're doing," she explained, scrolling through my phone without asking. "I'm just making it easier for them to stay informed. You don't need to worry about a thing." At the time, I didn't object. Between the physical pain and the mental fog of recovery, I was grateful for her help. She seemed to genuinely care, messaging family members, organizing meals, and managing the influx of concerned texts and calls. What I didn't realize was that she had taken complete control of the narrative and the money coming in from the fundraiser. At first, everything seemed normal. Lisa shared updates on my progress, writing heartfelt posts about my determination to recover. She encouraged people to donate to the fundraiser, promising that the money would go toward my medical bills, physical therapy, and other expenses. But as the days turned into weeks, small red flags began to appear. Whenever I asked how the fundraiser was doing, Lisa would brush me off with vague answers. "It's going great," she'd say, quickly steering the conversation elsewhere. If I pressed for details, how much had been raised, who had donated, she'd get defensive. "Why are you even worrying about this right now? Just focus on getting better." Her dismissive attitude nagged at me, but I was too drained to push further. Between my physical therapy sessions and the constant discomfort of healing, I didn't have the energy to question her intentions. The turning point came when a close friend, Mia, visited me in the hospital. She brought a bouquet of flowers and sat by my bed, catching me up on everything I'd missed during my recovery. "I hope the fundraiser's been helpful," Mia said casually. "I donated a pretty significant amount. I know it's not much compared to your medical bills, but I wanted to contribute." I blinked in confusion. "Thank you," I said, forcing a smile. "That's really generous of you." Her words lingered long after she left. Lisa hadn't mentioned a significant donation from Mia, or anyone for that matter. Where was all the money going? The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. Lisa had been strangely secretive about the fundraiser from the start, always deflecting questions or giving me the runaround. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. One evening, as I lay in bed scrolling through social media, I decided to check the fundraiser page myself. But when I tried to log in, I realized I didn't have access. Lisa had set it up under her name and email address, locking me out completely. I confronted her the next day, determined to get answers. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "Can you show me the fundraiser? I just want to see how it's doing." She froze for a moment, then forced a smile.
"Why?"
"I've been keeping you updated, haven't I?" "Not really," I said, my voice firmer now. "I'd like to see for myself." Her expression hardened. "You don't need to stress about this right now. I told you, I've got it under control." "Lisa," I said, my patience wearing thin. "It's my fundraiser. I have a right to know what's going on." She sighed dramatically, as if I were being unreasonable.
"Fine," she said.
"I'll show you later. Right now, I'm busy." But later never came. As more time passed and Lisa continued to dodge my questions, my suspicions grew. The fundraiser that had initially felt like a kind gesture now felt like a black hole, sucking in money with no clear explanation of where it was going. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about trust. Lisa had always been the dependable one, the sister I could count on no matter what. But now, for the first time in my life, I was starting to doubt her. And the more I observed, the more convinced I became that Lisa wasn't telling me the whole truth. The more evasive Lisa became, the stronger my suspicions grew. Every time I asked about the fundraiser, she'd deflect, her responses becoming increasingly curt and defensive. "You don't need to worry about it," she'd say, brushing me off with a wave of her hand. "Everything's being taken care of. Focus on your recovery." Her tone, once warm and supportive, now felt clipped and almost condescending. Something wasn't adding up, and no matter how much I wanted to trust her, the nagging feeling in my gut refused to go away. I finally decided enough was enough. If Lisa wasn't going to give me answers, I'd have to find them myself. A few days later, I reached out to my friend Mia, the same friend who had mentioned her significant donation. Mia was sharp, resourceful, and most importantly, tech-savvy. When I told her about my concerns, she didn't hesitate to offer her help. "Let's figure out what's going on," she said, her tone serious. Together, we dug into the fundraiser. With Mia's help, I managed to gain access to the account Lisa had created. The moment I logged in, my heart sank. The page showed that thousands of dollars had been donated, far more than I'd ever imagined. Family members, friends, coworkers, even acquaintances from years ago had contributed, their messages full of kindness and support. But none of that money had made its way to me. Instead, the transaction history told a very different story. Payments to high-end restaurants, online shopping sprees, and luxury items were scattered throughout the logs. The most shocking expense? A down payment on a brand new car. I stared at the screen in disbelief, my hands trembling. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the sheer audacity of what Lisa had done. She had used my tragedy, my pain, as an opportunity to enrich herself. And she had done it without a second thought. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I thought back to all the times Lisa had sat by my hospital bed, holding my hand and telling me she had everything under control. All the while, she had been funneling money meant for my recovery into her own selfish desires. I confronted her that same evening. I waited until she came over to drop off groceries, my heart pounding as I gathered the screenshots and evidence I'd compiled. "Lisa," I said, my voice cold and steady, "we need to talk." She looked up from unpacking a bag of apples, her expression wary. "About what?" I slid my phone across the table, the fundraiser's transaction history displayed on the screen. "About this." For a moment, her face went pale. But then she quickly recovered, forcing a laugh. What are you talking about? Those are just expenses. You don't understand how this works. Don't insult my intelligence, I snapped. I see exactly how this works. Thousands of dollars, money that was supposed to help me, went toward your car, your shopping, your nights out. How could you do this? Her defensiveness turned into anger. I did this for you, she shouted. Do you think anyone would have donated if I hadn't put in the effort? I made this happen, and I deserve something for my time and energy. Something? I repeated, my voice rising. You stole from me, Lisa. From our family, our friends, people who care about me and wanted to help. How do you even justify that? Her face twisted with indignation, but I saw something else beneath it. Guilt. You don't understand, she muttered, grabbing her bag and storming out before I could say another word. As the door slammed shut behind her, I sat there in stunned silence. My sister, the person I had trusted most during my recovery, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And now I had to figure out what to do next. The anger had been simmering ever since I uncovered the truth about the fundraiser, but I hadn't been ready to confront Lisa again until now. I spent days poring over the evidence, replaying her excuses in my mind, and reliving the shock of seeing where the money had gone. When she finally showed up at my apartment one evening, acting as though nothing had happened, I knew it was time to put everything on the table. As she walked in with her usual air of confidence, I wasted no time. We need to talk, I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. Lisa raised an eyebrow, casually setting down the bag of groceries she'd brought. Sure, she said, feigning innocence. What's on your mind? I grabbed my laptop, opening the folder of screenshots I'd saved from the fundraiser account. I slid the laptop across the table, the transaction history glaring up at her. Where's the money, Lisa? I demanded. How could you do this to me? For a moment, Lisa's face froze, her eyes darting between the screen and me. Then, with a forced laugh, she waved a hand dismissively. You're overreacting, she said. This is all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice rising. These transactions aren't for my medical bills. They're for your car, your shopping sprees, and your dinners out. Explain that, she sighed, her tone taking on an air of exasperation. Look, I was going to transfer the money to you. I just haven't had a chance yet. Things got complicated, and I had to handle some other expenses first. I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin. Other expenses? Do you hear yourself? This money was supposed to help me, Lisa, to pay for my recovery, my bills, my future. Not to fund your lifestyle. Her mask of innocence began to slip. You don't understand, she snapped, her voice shaking with emotion. I needed that money. Do you think this has been easy for me? Running the fundraiser, dealing with all those people asking questions, it's been exhausting. It's not like anyone else was stepping up to help you. Her words left me stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stepping up to help. I echoed, incredulous. That money wasn't yours to take, Lisa. People donated it because they wanted to support me. And you stole it? She stood there, arms crossed, her expression defiant. I did what I had to do, she said, her tone laced with bitterness. If you can't appreciate the effort I put in, then maybe you don't deserve my help. In that moment, I realized Lisa wasn't just selfish. She was manipulative, twisting the narrative to make herself the victim. Her complete lack of remorse was staggering, and it left me questioning how I had ever trusted her in the first place. You don't get to play the victim here, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. You took advantage of my pain, of our family's kindness, and of the people who cared about me. This isn't just a mistake, Lisa. It's a betrayal. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Regret, perhaps, or the realization that she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. But just as quickly, she hardened again, grabbing her bag and heading for the door. You'll thank me someday, she said over her shoulder, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Good luck without me. As the door slammed shut, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. Anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. Lisa had been my sister, my confidant, the person I thought I could count on during my darkest moments. But now, it was clear she was someone I didn't recognize anymore. And as I sat there in the quiet aftermath of our confrontation, I knew this was far from over. The fallout from Lisa's actions was swift and devastating. The moment I gathered my composure after our confrontation, I knew I couldn't let her get away with what she had done. My first step was contacting the platform that hosted the fundraiser. I reported her for fraud, explaining the situation in painful detail and providing screenshots of the transactions as evidence. To their credit, the platform took my complaint seriously. They froze the account immediately and launched an investigation. But despite their swift action, the damage was already done. Thousands of dollars had been funneled into Lisa's lifestyle, money that family and friends had donated in good faith, believing it would help me recover. When the news began to spread, the outrage was palpable. Friends and family members who had donated were furious, not just at Lisa, but also at the betrayal of trust. I gave her what I could, even though things are tight right now, one aunt said, her voice trembling with anger. And this is how she repays us? Lisa's once close relationships crumbled under the weight of her actions. Friends who had once adored her stopped answering her calls, and family members who had supported her through tough times now wanted nothing to do with her. My parents were caught in the middle, torn between their love for their daughter and their disappointment in her behavior. I don't know what to say, my mom admitted during a tense phone call. I just don't understand how Lisa could do something like this. She's always been so responsible. She was responsible, I said bitterly. Responsible for turning my tragedy into her payday. Even as Lisa faced growing isolation, she refused to take responsibility. She doubled down on her narrative, telling anyone who would listen that I was overreacting, that the money had been a misunderstanding, or that she had done what she did out of necessity. Her deflections only made things worse. At family gatherings, her name became a sore subject. Some relatives refused to speak of her at all, while others brought her up only to vent their anger. She's not welcome in my house anymore, one cousin declared during a holiday dinner. I don't care if she's family. What she did is unforgivable. For me, the emotional toll was staggering. Not only was I still grappling with the physical challenges of recovery, but now I was mourning the loss of a sister I thought I knew. Lisa hadn't just betrayed me financially. She had shattered the foundation of trust that had taken a lifetime to build. I found myself reliving old memories of Lisa, trying to reconcile the loving, supportive sister I had grown up with and the person who had orchestrated this scam. How had she become so selfish, so manipulative? Had I missed the warning signs, or had she always been this way, hiding it behind a veneer of kindness? As the weeks passed, I became more withdrawn, struggling to process the betrayal. Friends reached out to offer support, but I found it difficult to talk about what had happened. Every time I tried to explain, the words felt hollow, as if no explanation could capture the depth of the pain I felt. Lisa, meanwhile, remained unrepentant. She reached out a few times, sending me defensive messages that ranged from half-hearted apologies to outright blame. I never meant for it to go this far, she wrote in one text. But you're acting like I killed someone. Can't you just let it go? Her words only deepened the wound. Let it go? How could I let go of something that had cost me not just money, but the faith I had in her as my sister? Despite the anger and hurt, I knew I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't let Lisa's actions define me or derail my recovery. But the path ahead felt uncertain, and the loss of trust weighed heavily on my heart. The fallout from Lisa's scam had left a scar on my life, one that wouldn't heal easily. And as much as I tried to focus on my recovery, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of the battle. When the platform hosting the fundraiser launched their investigation, I felt a mix of relief and dread. On one hand, I hoped their findings would bring some form of justice. On the other, I wasn't sure I could handle knowing just how far Lisa's deceit had gone. It didn't take long for the details to start emerging. The investigators uncovered that Lisa hadn't just mishandled the funds, she had actively fabricated stories to drum up sympathy and boost donations. She exaggerated the severity of my injuries, claiming that I was facing years of physical therapy, mounting medical bills, and an uncertain prognosis. While my injuries were serious, they were nowhere near as dire as Lisa had described. Her version of events painted me as practically destitute and entirely reliant on the generosity of others. Seeing her lies laid out so clearly made my stomach turn. One of the most shocking revelations was her use of fake emails. Lisa had created multiple email accounts, posing as me to send messages to donors. These emails were full of heartfelt gratitude and detailed accounts of how their contributions were supposedly helping me. "Thank you for your kindness," one email read. "Because of your generosity, I've been able to afford the physical therapy I desperately need to walk again. You have no idea how much this means to me and my family." Another email went even further, describing imaginary hardships that had never happened. "We just got the news that my recovery will take longer than expected, and the medical bills are piling up. Your support is the only thing keeping us afloat during this difficult time. Reading those words felt like a gut punch. Not only had Lisa stolen money under the guise of helping me, but she had also manipulated the emotions of people who genuinely cared about me. Her deceit wasn't just financial, it was personal, targeting the relationships I had spent years building. The platform eventually decided to take action. They froze the remaining funds in the account and began the process of refunding as many donors as possible. However, not all the money could be recovered. Lisa had spent thousands of dollars on herself, money that was gone for good. The platform's investigation also led to a series of difficult conversations with donors. Family and friends who had contributed were contacted about the refunds, and many of them reached out to me, shocked and hurt by what had happened. "I can't believe she lied to us like that," one family friend said during a tearful phone call. "We gave because we wanted to help you. If we'd known it was going to her, I just feel so betrayed." Their words mirrored my own feelings. Lisa's actions hadn't just affected me, they had hurt everyone who had supported me during one of the hardest times in my life. The emotional damage was just as significant as the financial loss, leaving behind a fractured network of trust and goodwill. As the investigation continued, I found myself grappling with questions I couldn't answer. How had Lisa managed to lie so convincingly to people who knew us both? How long had she been capable of such deceit? And perhaps the hardest question of all, had I ever truly known my sister? The investigation into Lisa's fraud revealed the depth of her manipulation, but it also left scars that wouldn't heal easily. For every donor who received a refund, there were lingering feelings of betrayal and anger. And for me, the knowledge of what Lisa had done was a wound that cut deeper than I could have imagined. Even as the platform closed the case and the refunds were processed, the impact of Lisa's actions continued to ripple through my life. Her deceit had left a lasting legacy, one that I wasn't sure I could ever fully escape. The fallout from Lisa's actions wasn't limited to friends and donors. It struck at the very core of our family. What had once been a relatively close-knit group now felt like a battlefield, with everyone taking sides and the lines drawn clearly in the sand. My parents were devastated. My mom, in particular, was struggling to reconcile her love for Lisa with the anger and disappointment she felt. "I don't know what to do," she said during one of our many tense conversations. "She's still my daughter, but what she did, it's unforgivable." My dad was quieter, his emotions harder to read. But one evening, as we sat together in the living room, he finally spoke. "I didn't raise my kids to act like this," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I thought I taught you both better. I don't even recognize her anymore." While my parents wrestled with their feelings, the rest of the family wasn't nearly as conflicted. My cousins, aunts, and uncles were furious. Many of them had donated to the fundraiser, and the betrayal cut deep. "I don't want her in my house ever again," one of my uncles said during a family meeting. "What she did was disgusting. How can we trust her after this?" My cousins echoed the sentiment, some of them even blocking Lisa on social media and cutting off all contact. Family gatherings became tense and awkward, with Lisa noticeably absent and her name avoided like a taboo. "She's a disgrace," one cousin said bluntly during a dinner. "If she shows up at Christmas, I'm leaving." The once tight bonds that had held our family together were frayed beyond repair. Every conversation seemed to circle back to Lisa, and every mention of her name sparked a fresh wave of anger and resentment. Caught in the middle, I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions. On one hand, I was still furious with Lisa, her betrayal a wound that refused to heal. On the other, I couldn't ignore the pain it was causing my parents to see the family torn apart. "She's your sister," my mom said during one particularly heated conversation. "I know what she did was wrong, but don't you think she deserves a chance to make things right?" I shook my head, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "She had her chance, Mom," I said. "She had a chance when I confronted her, and instead of apologizing, she doubled down and tried to justify it. I can't just pretend everything's okay, because it's not." My dad sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I get where you're coming from," he said. "But this family can't survive if we're all at each other's throats. We need to find a way to move forward." But how could we move forward when the trust that had once defined our family had been shattered? Every time I thought about forgiving Lisa, I remembered the emails she had sent pretending to be me, the money she had spent on herself while I struggled to recover. For now, I kept my distance, avoiding the family gatherings where Lisa's name inevitably came up. I couldn't handle the pressure to keep the peace, not when I was still reeling from everything that had happened. The division within our family was a painful reminder of just how far-reaching Lisa's actions had been. It wasn't just about the money or the fundraiser. It was about the relationships she had destroyed, the trust she had broken, and the rift she had created in a family that would never be the same again. Months after the fallout from Lisa's betrayal, just when I thought I'd begun to heal, she resurfaced. It started with a voicemail I almost didn't listen to. Seeing her name pop up on my phone triggered a mix of anger and sadness, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was shaky and tearful, a far cry from the defiant tone she'd used during our last confrontation. "I know I messed up," she said. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm still your sister. Can't we find a way to move past this?" I sat in silence after the message ended, staring at the phone in my hand. Her words stirred something deep within me, memories of a sister I had grown up with, the person I had once trusted implicitly. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hope that this was the start of genuine remorse. But another part couldn't forget the pain she had caused, the trust she had shattered, and the people she had hurt. The decision to call her back wasn't easy. I spent hours replaying the voicemail, dissecting every word, wondering if her tears were genuine or just another performance. When I finally pressed the call button, my heart pounded in my chest. Lisa picked up on the second ring. "Hey," she said softly, her voice tentative. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. She sighed. "I've been thinking a lot about what I did," she said. "I know I hurt you, and I know I let everyone down. I don't have an excuse for it, but I want to make things right. I don't know how, but I want to try." Her words caught me off guard. This wasn't the defensive, self-righteous Lisa I had confronted months ago. This was someone who seemed broken, humbled. But could I trust it? "You didn't just hurt me," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You hurt everyone who cared about me. People who gave money they couldn't afford, thinking it was helping me. Do you have any idea what that kind of betrayal feels like?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I do," she said finally. "I see it every time I talk to Mom and Dad. Every time someone in the family won't even look at me. I ruined everything, and I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix it." Her admission brought a lump to my throat. It was the first time she had acknowledged the full scope of her actions, but it wasn't enough to erase the pain. "Sorry isn't going to cut it," I said. "If you're serious about making amends, you need to show it. Words aren't enough." Over the next few weeks, Lisa made several attempts to reach out. She sent texts and left more voicemails, each one a little more heartfelt than the last. "I know I don't deserve your trust," one message read, "but I'll do whatever it takes to earn it back." Her persistence was unexpected, but it didn't soften me entirely. Forgiveness, I knew, wasn't something I could hand out freely. It had to be earned, and it would take time. When I finally agreed to meet her for coffee, it was with a long list of conditions. "If you're serious about fixing this," I told her, "you need to take responsibility. Not just to me, but to everyone you hurt. You need to apologize, pay back what you can, and prove that you've changed. Until then, I can't trust you." She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "I'll do it," she said. "Whatever it takes." I wanted to believe her, but a small voice in the back of my mind warned me to be cautious. Lisa had always been good with words, but actions spoke louder. Whether she was willing to do the work remained to be seen. As I left the cafe that day, I felt a glimmer of hope, but also a heavy dose of skepticism. Rebuilding trust would be a long and difficult road, and I wasn't sure if Lisa was truly ready for the journey. But for the first time since the fallout, I felt like there was a possibility, however small, that we might find a way forward. In the months following Lisa's plea for forgiveness, I focused on rebuilding my life. The physical recovery from the accident was slow but steady. Each week, I gained a little more mobility, a little more strength. The emotional wounds, however, were far more stubborn. The betrayal from someone I had trusted so deeply left a mark that wouldn't fade easily. I threw myself into the relationships that mattered most, friends who had stood by me, family members who had rallied to my side during the fallout. Their unwavering support reminded me that while Lisa had shattered my trust, she hadn't destroyed my ability to rely on others. Slowly, I began to piece my life back together, one day at a time. Still, the scars from Lisa's actions lingered. Every so often, a comment or a memory would bring the pain rushing back. It wasn't just about the money she had taken, it was about the trust she had broken and the ripple effect it had on everyone around us. As I moved forward, the question of Lisa's place in my life became impossible to ignore. Some family members encouraged me to give her another chance, arguing that she was trying to make amends and deserved an opportunity to prove herself. "She's your sister," my mom said one evening during a phone call. "I know what she did was awful, but she's trying to make things right. Don't you think that counts for some things?" Others weren't so forgiving. My cousin Emily, who had donated to the fundraiser and felt deeply betrayed, had a very different opinion. "Cut her off," she said bluntly during a family gathering. "People like that don't change. She'll just hurt you again." I found myself torn between these opposing views. On one hand, I wanted to protect myself from further pain. On the other, I couldn't completely ignore the part of me that still loved my sister, that wanted to believe she was capable of redemption. In the end, I decided to set firm boundaries. Lisa could be part of my life, but only if she demonstrated real accountability and a commitment to change. This wasn't about shutting her out. It was about protecting my peace while leaving the door open for reconciliation if she was willing to do the work. Setting those boundaries wasn't easy, especially with the family dynamics at play. Some relatives accused me of being too harsh, while others thought I was being too lenient. But I knew this was a decision I had to make for myself. I laid out my expectations clearly during a conversation with Lisa. "If you want to be in my life," I told her, "it has to be on my terms. That means taking full responsibility for what you did, not just to me, but to everyone you hurt. It means making an effort to rebuild trust, not just with words, but with actions." She nodded, her expression serious. "I understand," she said. "I know I have a lot to make up for, and I'll do whatever it takes." Her response gave me a glimmer of hope, but I remained cautious. Trust, I had learned, wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. It would take time, consistency, and genuine effort on her part. As the weeks went by, Lisa began to take small steps toward accountability. She reached out to family members she had wronged, offering apologies that felt more sincere than her earlier defenses. She even started making small repayments to those who had donated to the fundraiser, a gesture that, while symbolic, showed she was trying. For me, healing was a gradual process. Forgiveness wasn't immediate or all-encompassing. It was something I worked toward in pieces, day by day. But with each step forward, I felt a little lighter, a little more at peace. In time, I began to see the cracks in our family begin to heal as well. While some relationships remained strained, others started to mend. Conversations grew less tense, and family gatherings felt a little less heavy. Moving forward wasn't just about rebuilding my relationship with Lisa. It was about finding a way to let go of the anger and pain that had weighed me down for so long. It was about reclaiming my life and focusing on what truly mattered: my recovery, my well-being, and the people who had stood by me through it all. It wasn't easy, but it was a step toward healing, for me, for Lisa, and for our entire family. As I reflect on everything that happened, it's hard to believe how much my life has changed since that fateful day of the accident. What began as a physical battle to recover from my injuries became a far more complex journey, one of emotional healing, rediscovering trust, and learning the hard truths about family and forgiveness. The experience taught me lessons I never expected to learn. Chief among them was the importance of trust, not just in others, but in myself. For a long time, I doubted my ability to see people clearly. Lisa's betrayal shook the foundation of my judgment, leaving me wondering if I'd been blind to her true nature all along. But as time passed, I realized that her actions weren't a reflection of my failure. They were a reflection of her choices. Accountability became another cornerstone of my recovery. Watching Lisa struggle to make amends, I saw firsthand how difficult it can be to face the consequences of one's actions. Her journey, while far from complete, reminded me that accountability is a two-way street. It requires both the willingness to take responsibility and the patience to let others rebuild trust on their own terms. One of the hardest lessons I learned was the value of setting boundaries, even with the people you love most. Growing up, I believed that family was unconditional, that no matter what, you always stood by them. But Lisa's actions forced me to reevaluate that belief. Boundaries weren't about shutting her out. They were about protecting my peace and creating space for genuine healing. By setting those limits, I found clarity and strength, knowing I didn't have to sacrifice my well-being to maintain a relationship. While my relationship with Lisa remains complicated, I've come to accept that some things may never fully heal. There are still moments when the past creeps in, when the sting of her betrayal feels fresh again. But I've also learned to focus on what I can control: my own growth, my own happiness, and the relationships that truly matter. Throughout it all, I've gained a newfound appreciation for the kindness and support of the people who stood by me. Friends who showed up when I needed them most, family members who rallied to my side, and even acquaintances who reached out with small gestures of encouragement. All of them reminded me that while trust can be broken, it can also be rebuilt. I've also learned to value honesty and integrity more deeply than ever before. Lisa's betrayal may have tested my faith in others, but it also strengthened my resolve to surround myself with people who share those values. In the end, Lisa's actions didn't break me. They challenged me, hurt me, and forced me to grow in ways I hadn't anticipated. But they also made me more resilient, more determined, and more aware of the strength I carry within myself. Looking back, I can say with certainty that I'm stronger because of what I endured. While I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, I'm grateful for the lessons it brought. They've shaped me into the person I am today, someone who knows the value of trust, the necessity of boundaries, and the power of choosing to move forward, no matter how difficult the path may be.